I didn't plan to save the recording. Honestly, I wasn't even supposed to hear it. But the moment my boss laughed and said, "What idiots actually pay him?" something inside me went very, very still. People talk about snapping. I didn't snap. I froze. Like my brain took a picture of that moment and filed it under. Remember this. It's the line. You ever have a day where you wake up thinking it'll be just another Tuesday, and then by lunch you realize your entire life is shifting under you? That was mine. And the worst part is, it didn't start with an insult. It started with routine. The kind of routine that lulls you into thinking disrespect is normal. My name's Ethan, and for 3 years I sat in the same corner desk of a glassbox marketing company that looked far richer than it actually was. My job: fix what broke, repair what someone else panicked over, patch holes, rewrite scripts, untangle client data no one else understood. Some people get titles like senior analyst or lead specialist. Mine said support coordinator, which basically meant if it's on fire, throw it at Ethan. And I did it. Every day. Quietly. Without drama. The office was a factory of fake enthusiasm, the kind where people shouted, "Happy Monday," even when they were dying inside. Beige carpet, ergonomic chairs that weren't actually ergonomic, and the ever-present smell of burnt coffee. My inbox was always full. My brain was always humming. My boss, Mark, loved that about me. Or rather, he loved exploiting it. Mark was one of those guys who talked with too many teeth. Everything he said dripped with a kind of smug confidence you only develop when you've never actually been good at anything. Gelled hair, expensive watch, a wrist flick he probably practiced in a mirror. He managed people by humiliating them softly, like a hobby he didn't know how to quit. "Ethan, buddy, you're a lifesaver," he'd say one minute. "Ethan, did you break this? Or were you just born confused?" he'd say the next. I used to tell myself it wasn't personal. But disrespect always becomes personal, eventually. What Mark didn't know, what none of them knew, was that when I went home, I didn't collapse on the couch. I opened my laptop. I had a small online consulting gig that started as a weekend thing and slowly grew teeth. A couple automation scripts here, data cleanup there, then bigger projects, then steady clients. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, but real work, real money, real respect. It wasn't enough to quit yet, but it was enough to feel the possibility. And maybe that's why Mark hated it. He loved control. He loved the idea that everyone in the office needed him more than he needed them. Any sign of independence, even just me having a life outside the office, irritated him in ways he couldn't hide. Still, that morning felt like any other. I fixed an API issue, helped a coworker who pretended not to see me when the credit came around. Mark slapped my back twice, his version of a thank you, and asked, "Hey champ, still doing that little computer hobby of yours? How's that going? Making bank yet?" He laughed before I even answered. I smiled because that's what you do when your paycheck depends on someone else's ego. By noon, I needed air. I stepped into the small conference room, the one nobody used except for storage boxes and the sad fake plant that shed plastic leaves. I just wanted quiet. Instead, I heard voices, Mark's voice, and our regional manager, Lisa. They were on a video call. The door hadn't closed fully and their voices leaked through the crack, sharp and unfiltered. Lisa asked, "Is Ethan still doing his side gigs? Thought we talked about that." Mark laughed. A full, ugly laugh, the kind people use when they think they're being clever. "Oh yeah," he said. "He's still at it. Apparently people pay him, God knows why. What idiots actually pay him? But hey, as long as it keeps him happy and quiet, let him pretend he's some kind of freelance genius." "Makes my job easier," Lisa snorted. "As long as he doesn't think he's irreplaceable." "Oh, please," Mark said. "He'd panic if we took his badge away. Guys like him don't go anywhere. They're grateful for scraps." Something happened to my breathing. It didn't quicken. It didn't stop. It just flattened, like hearing someone describe a version of you that doesn't exist, but they believe it so deeply it almost becomes real. I wasn't supposed to hear that. I know that. But life doesn't care about supposed to. It hands you moments, and you decide whether to swallow them or choke on them. I stood there, my hand on the doorknob, listening to Mark dismiss years of work in 2 sentences. Listening to him belittle a career I'd been building in the dark, brick by brick. Listening to him act like he owned my fear. But here's the thing. Fear only works on people who still need you. And right then, for the first time, I realized maybe I didn't. I walked back to my desk without making a sound, without confronting him, without telling anyone. Because anger is noisy, but clarity is quiet. And my clarity arrived all at once, sharp as a pin. This man thinks he knows my value. He doesn't, but he's about to. And at that moment, though I didn't know it yet, everything he said behind that half-closed door would become the reason his entire world started to crack. But that was just the beginning. You'd think hearing your boss mock your entire career would be the worst part. It wasn't. The worst part was realizing how quickly people change once they believe you won't push back. It's like disrespect gives them permission to dig deeper, test you harder, see how far the leash stretches before it snaps. The day after I overheard Mark, he was lighter, relaxed, almost cheerful, the kind of cheerful a man gets when he thinks he's untouchable. At 9:12 a.m., he tossed a stack of client revisions onto my desk without stopping. "Need this by noon, champ. You're the only one who understands this mess." No please, no context, no acknowledgement that he'd just dumped 4 hours of work on me. He didn't even look up. A few minutes later, he passed by again. "Oh, and after lunch, jump on the Henderson issue. It's a total disaster. You'll fix it. You always fix it." He said it with the tone you'd use with a dog. "Fetch." I stared at the stack of papers. Something was different. Not in the work. The work was the same endless avalanche, but in me. The sting from yesterday hadn't faded. It had calcified. I didn't feel hurt anymore. I felt observant, like I was watching an animal reveal its nature. By the afternoon team meeting, Mark was in full performance mode. He paced the front of the room like a coach who'd never actually played the sport. "So," he said, tapping the plasma screen, "our automation scripts need to be redone. Frankly, the results were sloppy." He glanced at me. Everyone else followed his eyes. That was his trick. Indirect blame. Public stage. I opened my mouth, calmly ready to explain the scripts were not sloppy. The client's brief was. But Mark cut me off with a laugh. "Don't worry, guys. Ethan loves these little coding puzzles. Keeps him busy. Gives him purpose." The room went awkwardly silent. I hadn't felt embarrassed. Embarrassment comes when you respect the person judging you. I didn't. Not anymore. What I felt instead was something cleaner, sharper, distance, like he was speaking to a man who wasn't there. After the meeting, a coworker, Julia, touched my elbow and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. She didn't believe me, but she walked away. No one wanted to be too close to whatever Mark targeted. He thrived on creating that quiet pressure. At 5 p.m., everyone rushed for the exit. I stayed behind, not because of the work. I stayed because I wasn't going to let anger make decisions for me. I opened my budget sheet, my freelance tracker, my invoices, my savings. And just like that, a truth snapped into focus. My side gig had matched my salary last month, and this month it had passed it. I sat there staring at the numbers. My boss had mocked my career, called the people who hired me idiots, said I'd panic without him. Meanwhile, the only thing keeping that office from collapsing most days was me. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like stepping out of fog into daylight. Now I didn't just want to leave eventually. I knew I could leave soon. That night I got home, opened my laptop, and began setting the stage. Quietly, carefully. I rewrote my service packages, made them cleaner, clearer, more expensive. Created an independent business email domain. moved my clients off platforms where Mark could claim conflict of interest if he ever tried to be petty. Built a separate financial account for business income so nothing mixed with my salary. No threats, no warnings, just preparation. People think leaving a job is a moment. It's not. It's 100 small decisions made in silence. By the end of the week, Mark pushed harder. It was almost amusing. Every time I internally moved one step further away from this place, he seemed to sense he needed to tug the leash again. Friday morning, he leaned against my cubicle wall. "Hey, champ," he said, chewing the cap of his pen. "Did your little online clients keep you busy last night?" He said it loud enough for the nearby desks to hear. I looked at him, really looked at him, a grown man who needed to minimize someone else to feel taller. For the first time, I didn't feel defensive. I felt free. He didn't notice. People like Mark never notice the moment their power slips. After lunch, he gathered everyone for a quick sync. That meant 20 minutes of him pretending he had something important to say, and using corporate jargon like seasoning. When someone asked who would handle the Henderson file, he smirked and said, "Let's give it to Ethan. He enjoys basement-level work. It fits his vibe." A couple people looked at the table, embarrassed for him. And that was the instant, the microsecond. Something inside me pivoted. I wasn't asking for respect. I wasn't demanding it. I was simply done pretending this was normal. That night I stayed late again, but not for him. I drafted a resignation letter, not to send, not yet, just to see it written, to feel the weight of it. In the quiet of that empty office, I realized something important. Mark thought he could talk about me like I was nothing because he believed he owned my future. He didn't know I had already built one without him. By the time I closed my laptop, a calm settled over me. Steady, heavy, grounding. I wasn't the guy who froze in the doorway anymore. Listening to someone belittle me, I was a man making choices. And the choice had already been made, even if he didn't know it. I walked out of the office, past the flickering exit sign, down the empty stairwell, and into the cool night air. My phone buzzed with a new freelance request, a referral from a client I'd helped months ago. I accepted it before I even reached my car. A month earlier, I would have hesitated. Now, no hesitation, no fear, because whatever Mark thought he knew about me, he was wrong. And what came next would cost him far more than he ever expected. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. Monday morning didn't start with an earthquake, but the tension in the office felt like standing on a fault line. A major client, Redwood Solutions, had sent an urgent request overnight. They were our biggest account, the kind that paid salaries, kept lights on, and made Mark walk around with his chest inflated like a parade balloon. Redwood wanted a full system audit by Wednesday. 2 days. And everyone in that building knew the only person who actually understood the analytics pipeline was, well, me. By 9:45 a.m., the office was vibrating, people whispering, Slack messages firing, Mark pacing with his stressed grin, the one where his teeth showed but nothing in his eyes moved. At 10:03, he called for a critical alignment meeting. Translation: he needed someone to clean up his mess. We squeezed into the glass conference room. Mark stood at the head of the table like he was about to announce a medical miracle. "Redwood is requesting a complete breakdown of the Q3 tracking model," he said, clicking through a slide he clearly hadn't read. "We need someone who understands the structure, the scripts, the logging chain." His eyes slid to me. "There he is," he added, smiling like he'd just found a lost dog. I didn't respond. I just met his gaze, steady, level. Something in my stillness made him blink. He continued anyway. "Ethan, you'll take lead, obviously. Start today. I'll supervise and handle comms on my end." The room waited for my usual nod, my quiet acceptance. Instead, I said flatly, "Mark, Redwood's pipeline is outdated. I've recommended updates for 6 months. You ignored all of them." A few heads snapped up. Mark's smile strained. "Let's keep personal opinions out of—" "Facts aren't opinions," I said. If they're requesting a full system audit, they deserve honesty about why things are failing. Silence spread across the table like spilled ink. Mark cleared his throat. Right, moving on. But the room wasn't moving on. They'd felt the shift. I wasn't pushing back with anger. I was just refusing to play the part he'd assigned me. The days spiraled from there. Redwood's requests piled up. Missing logs, inconsistent timestamping, a misfired tracking event that someone had patched incorrectly. All the mistakes pointed in one direction. Mark's shortcuts, Mark's decisions, Mark's efficiency hacks. He paced behind my chair, pretending to supervise, but really trying to see what I was doing, how bad the damage was. Around 3 p.m., he leaned in too close and whispered, "Don't make me look bad. I didn't even turn. You did that yourself." His face twitched. Not anger, fear. By 4:30 he snapped. He stormed over during a client prep call, snatched my notebook off the desk, and barked, "You need to get your attitude under control. This isn't your little freelance playground. This is a real company." The entire office froze. I stood, calm, almost detached. "You want to talk about real?" I said. "Fine, let's talk." He opened his mouth, probably to deliver some practice speech about respect, professionalism, hierarchy. I didn't wait. I quit. 2 words. Normal volume. No theatrics. The room turned to static. Mark's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "You what?" "I quit," I repeated. "Effective immediately." A few desks away, someone whispered, "Holy shit," under their breath. Mark laughed, sharp, desperate. "Ethan, be serious." "I'm very serious." He dropped the notebook on my desk. "You can't just walk out. We need you on Redwood. We need you this week." "No," I said, picking up my bag. "You need me. Redwood needs competence. They'll get it, just not from you." Something in his expression cracked, the realization that he had pushed a man who no longer needed him. "Ethan," he hissed, "think about your future." "I am," I said. "That's why I'm leaving." I walked to the elevator. No applause, no dramatic music, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the sound of a door closing behind me. Quietly, finally. The chaos began before I reached the parking lot. My phone buzzed nonstop, missed calls, messages from coworkers, Slack pings exploding like fireworks. "Mark, we need to talk. Come back. Ops manager." "Redwood is freaking out. Did you already leave?" Coworker Julia. "Are you actually gone? Please tell me Mark didn't drive you out." I turned the phone face down and drove home. That night, while I sat at my kitchen table eating leftover pasta, I got an email. Not from Mark, not from the company, from Redwood's project director. Subject line, "Need to discuss your availability." I opened it. "Ethan, we've appreciated the clarity and professionalism of your work. We've noticed inconsistencies coming from the management end. We'd like to speak privately if you're open to consulting independently." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Redwood wasn't just a big client. They were the client. They were the reason the company still existed. And they'd reached out to me. I replied, "Happy to discuss. When works for you?" The meeting was scheduled for the next afternoon. The call lasted 40 minutes. They asked what I would do differently. I told them plainly. They asked if I could fix their issues. I said yes. They asked my rate. I said a number that made my hands sweat. They didn't blink. "We can approve that," they said. When the call ended, I sat there in my silent apartment, staring at the blank wall. Not from disbelief, but from the weight of a truth settling in. Mark hadn't just lost control. He'd lost the one person keeping his world standing upright. And Redwood had just taken the first step toward removing him entirely. As I closed my laptop, another thought surfaced. Quiet, steady, electric. He thought I was gone. I wasn't. Not yet. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. Redwood scheduled the in-person meeting for Thursday morning. Neutral location, their downtown office, 10th floor. Glass walls, minimalist decor that screamed competence. I arrived 10 minutes early, Wearing the one suit I owned that actually fit, I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. Something about walking away from chaos resets your nervous system. You stop bracing. You start choosing. The receptionist led me to a conference room overlooking the river. Sunlight hit the table at an angle that made everything feel strangely ceremonial, like I'd stepped into a moment that was already mine. 2 Redwood executives were there. We exchanged polite nods. Then the door opened behind me, and in walked Mark. He froze when he saw me. Not dramatically, not with shock. More like a hard blink, a glitch in his understanding of how the world worked. "Ethan," he said, voice cracking just enough. I didn't answer. I just sat. One of the executives gestured for him to take a seat on the opposite side. It was the longest walk I'd ever seen a man take in 10 steps. They started with small talk, corporate fluff, project timelines. Mark jumped in quickly, trying to reclaim the front of the room. "We're fully prepared to support the audit," he said. "My team—" "Your team isn't the issue," the director interrupted gently. "We've had concerns about the managerial layer, not the technical one." Mark blinked. Twice. They turned to me. "Ethan's assessment last week was precise. We value accuracy." That was the moment the silence thickened. Not hostile. Factual. Redwood wasn't here to negotiate with Mark. They were here to move him out of the way. "We'd like Ethan to lead the restoration of the tracking model," the director continued, "as an external consultant." Extern consultant. Each word was a brick in a wall Mark couldn't climb. He tried anyway. "With respect," he said, leaning forward, "Ethan lacks the oversight experience to manage a project of this scope. I've supervised—" "We're aware," Redwood cut in, "which is why we're restructuring the workflow. Ethan will report directly to us." His mouth opened, then closed again. He looked at me like I was supposed to throw him a rope. But all I did was meet his eyes calmly, the same way he had looked at me months earlier, as if I were small, trapped, stuck. Except now the roles had shifted. "Ethan," Redwood asked, "do these terms work for you?" "Perfectly," I said. Mark swallowed. It sounded loud. The meeting moved on without him. Questions, clarifications, scope outlines. My voice steady the whole time. Mark kept trying to insert himself, but every time he spoke, someone gently redirected back to me. By the end, he looked like a man who had just watched a building collapse one floor at a time and realized he'd been standing at the top. When the meeting adjourned, Redwood executives shook my hand first. Then they left. I packed my notebook slowly. I could feel Mark standing there, waiting for something he couldn't name out loud. When the door finally closed, he said, "Ethan, this isn't— you shouldn't do this." His voice was thin, stripped of the confidence he wore like a cheap cologne. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just stopped covering for you." He blinked again, that same glitch. "You think they'll treat you better? You think you're suddenly irreplaceable?" "No," I said. "I just know I'm not disposable." He looked down at his hands. Not angry. Not furious. Just, hollow. The man who once laughed about idiots paying me couldn't even meet my eyes. "I didn't mean what I said," he murmured. "You did," I replied. "And it's fine. You showed me what staying would cost." He didn't respond. What could he say? The hierarchy he worshipped didn't exist in this room anymore. I walked past him without another word. As the elevator doors closed, I saw him standing there. Not a villain, not a tyrant, just a man who had mistaken someone else's silence for weakness and realized too late it wasn't. Redwood onboarded me within a week. The rate was higher than anything I'd ever imagined earning. Workload manageable, expectations clear, meetings short, communication respectful. For the first time in years, my workday didn't feel like bracing for impact. The audit took 3 weeks. I rebuilt what needed rebuilding, documented what was broken, delivered everything early. Redwood's director called me personally. "You've saved the quarter, possibly the year." I didn't save anything. I just did the job right. A few days later, I heard from a former coworker that the company had lost the Redwood account completely. That was their lifeline. Without it, cuts came fast, desperate, predictable. Mark wasn't fired immediately. It was worse than that. He was demoted, quietly, internally, then reassigned to a role with no direct reports and no client access. Eventually, with budgets shrinking, his position was eliminated. Corporate code for "the problem is no longer our problem." I didn't celebrate, not out loud, not internally. Karma isn't a victory lap, it's a mirror. Life after the company wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was simple. I woke up without dread, worked with clients who respected me, built systems that made sense instead of patching ones, built on someone else's ego. I took walks at lunch, made real dinners, answered emails without my jaw tightening. One evening, months later, I sat by the window, reviewing a new contract. The city outside hummed, soft, distant, peaceful. My phone buzzed, a new email, from Mark, subject line, "Coffee?" I stared at it, not angry, not even surprised. People reach out when the dust settles, hoping the story rewrites itself. The message was short. "I'd like to talk, clear the air." I deleted it, not out of spite, out of clarity. Some doors aren't meant to reopen. Some lessons aren't meant to be softened afterward. I finished reviewing the contract, signed it, closed my laptop. For a long moment, I just sat there, breathing in the quiet, a quiet I had built, chosen, earned. Then a thought flickered through my mind, the same line he'd once said behind a door he hadn't bothered to close. What idiots actually pay him? I smiled. The answer was simple now. People who saw value where he never looked. People who respected work he never understood. People who weren't idiots at all. Just people who knew what I had finally learned to know. I wasn't small, I wasn't stuck, and I was never his to define. Life didn't get louder after I left. It got cleaner. And in that quiet, I finally heard myself think, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.